Okay, and we're live. So welcome to episode 6 of the Leadership Zoomcast. Fantastic to see everyone, and welcome back. Thank you for watching. Albert, how you doing today?
All right, I'm good. It's been a busy week, actually. We've had a few things going on. You and I have managed to spend some time together. I've had some other things going on. And interesting stuff, actually.
It's been great. I've had a great week too, actually. Well, it's Thursday today, so it's get confusing with all the days, but it's Thursday today. And actually, the last 2 days, I've had face-to-face meetings for the first time since lockdown. And mainly all outside, of course.
Yeah.
Tuesday you and I met up, and we had a bit of a walk. We were hoping to go out sailing, but we couldn't, so we went for a walk and had a good catch up. And yesterday, I was out walking with a couple of clients that I'm tired of seeing on Zoom, and I just thought it'd be great to see them face to face. Covered about 10 miles walking in the end with both of them. Got completely soaked, but it was great just to get together and have and actually it leads really nicely onto the topic for this week. So it's been good actually. It's been. And how's the feedback looking? How's the feedback on the podcast?
It's not bad, actually. It's a little bit quieter than the week before. Episode 5 was a little bit quieter, but we've been talking to a lot of people. A lot of people are getting back to work. A lot of people are now back into their normal run and not maybe getting to the screen like they do. But it sometimes kind of comes through. But that's okay. We're getting some good comments. And I think having Gene with us last week was a really good session. So, yeah.
I actually was talking to a guy yesterday, one of the guys I coached. He said, I was watching you and Alfred over the weekend. He said it was great.
Listen, you and I have had that for years, right? If it's not Alfred, it's Joseph. So that's okay. They can call me
that's true. Yeah, exactly. So, and today's topic is, it kind of spun off from last week, and we said we wanted to cover it because it's a really, really important topic. And I've got a funny feeling I might get a bit passionate in this conversation. But the topic is about looking after yourself as a leader and the importance of looking after yourself as a leader. So let me let you kick off with your initial thoughts on that.
Well, I think, the thing is, the job takes over, right? So we're always in the job. We're all spending all the hours there. We're all spending all the time there. For me personally, I think you've got to look at what's important in what makes you perform to your best. What's the best tool that you've got? What's the best tool you've got to be able to be successful and do your best? And to me,
it's Zoom, isn't it?
It's Zoom. Other platforms are available. But to me, it's your mind, it's your body. If you haven't got the right energy levels, if you haven't got the right drive, if you haven't got the right ability to keep going and to feel good every day, then all the rest of it doesn't really matter. Would you get by? Yeah, I think you get by. Could you be the best ever that you could be to the top of your potential? No. I mean, that's my opening view on it, Neil.
So I'm just doing my preparation as you're talking, actually. So, so I actually wrote down that the first thing I wanted to kind of cover was, why is it important to look after yourself as a leader? And because that's, you get lots of excuses. I haven't got time to do that. I'll do it when when I've got time, or when I've got this organised, or when I've got myself structured. I'll get on round to looking after myself. But I think there are 3 reasons why. 3 things I wrote down. Firstly, it's about you and yourself. You've got to look after yourself, because any leadership role, whether you're a first-line manager or whether you're a managing director or a chief executive of a business, there is a stress level that goes with that. Yeah. And there is a lifestyle that goes with that typically isn't healthy. With travel and long hours and all that kind of stuff. So you've got to look after yourself, because what's the alternative? You don't look after yourself. And we've seen it, unfortunately, we've seen it in people we know well who have become ill. And, the stress, the amount of people off with stress in companies has gone up massively over the years. I think mainly because mental health is better understood these days.
Yeah.
But also, we know people who've died. We know people who've burnt themselves out. By the time they're in their mid-50s, they've stressed themselves so much. Their blood pressure is so high. They're diabetic, and they've burnt out. And unfortunately, they've died, or they've got really, really ill, got really bad illnesses. So you've got to do it for yourself. What do you think?
No, but I think so. I think an important point around that one is the timing of that, right? So you could probably do it for a short period.
Yeah.
You could probably do it for 5, 6 years. I don't know, because it is years, it's not months. You probably could. But then have you just limited your career? Have you just limited your life? And it's just take me to another place, actually. Your career is not your life. I mean, guys watching this, maybe it is for you, right? But certainly what I've found since I came out of the corporate world is my life is not my job. Right? My life is bigger than that, with my family, with my friends, and with other things that I do. So the other thing about this is making sure that you can have a life. Because if you work so crazy without looking after yourself and your weekend becomes nothing more than locking yourself in the dark room ready for Monday morning, that ain't a life. But you decide, right? You decide what's important to you.
I agree. And actually, your people, it's not their life either. So you've got to remember that as well. I see this too often in businesses where the leader thinks that we just got to be push. We've got to drive. And when they send an email on Saturday night and there's been no response by Sunday morning, they think someone's slacking, or that their expectations are right, and that creates. And this is the second point I was going to make. So it's really important you look after yourself for you, but it's really important that you look after yourself because you're setting the standards for the business or your team, and people look to you for guidance and advice. And if you're working 7 days a week and you're working late in the evening and you're not looking after yourself mentally, physically, etc., then it's a bad example to everyone else around you.
Yeah. I think the good thing is there's a lot more awareness about it, right? So companies that you see, one of the companies I used to work for, they had a no weekend email policy, right? They would not send emails on a weekend. Now, hell, you'd get a hell of a load of stuff on a Monday morning, but they would not send emails on a weekend. And if somehow someone got through the net and sent it, you had no need to answer that.
That wasn't a French company, was it?
It was a French company, yeah.
Because they did implement a policy in France, which I really like, actually, is about no emails going out after 6 o'clock in the evening. And they had servers that block them, didn't they? They had to set up certain companies that had to block, and the weekends as well.
Yeah. And by the way, that's not a bad thing, because look, I'm not saying you stop thinking about your job when you're not working. We're always thinking about it. As a leader, you are always thinking about it because you're looking at how can I improve. You're thinking about your people. You're thinking about how it's performing. But that thinking is a separate task from doing. Yeah. That's a separate task from sitting in front of spreadsheets and emails, right?
And I think so. One of the things that frustrates the hell out of me, and it always did in the past, is this ego that you see in leaders that think they have to be the toughest. I mean, Christ, excuse my language. We've got some great examples around the world now of leaders who think the answer is to be the toughest person in the, and it's not. If you're first person in the car park, last person out the car park, and you're working weekends, that's just ego. You've got to be the last one in the bar because that's what leaders do. That's rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. Leaders do not do that. That is just poor leadership. If you think your ego is needed, you have to be the toughest person. That is rubbish. That is poor leadership.
And you're right. We touched on this last week, actually, right? And we have seen situations where it's happened. So is that outdated leadership and is that outdated management style? Yeah, it is. It probably had a place once upon a time. And the worst thing about it was everybody was competing with each other, right? So it just got completely out of hand. Thankfully, I think we've moved beyond that. And we've moved to a place where you're looking at how do you make best use of your time and how do you make best use of looking after yourself to be the best for your team and your business.
Yeah, I think so. And I think so because we want to move on to the how. So I think the first two whys we've talked about are look after yourself for your own benefit. Don't wait till it's urgent and important. Deal with it when it's not urgent and important. The second thing is about your team and your people, because if you set the wrong example or have the wrong expectations, you're damaging them as well. Yeah. And also you're also losing their respect as well because they don't respect you. And the third thing is if you don't look after yourself, your business is going to suffer.
Yeah.
Because you can't operate at your best if if your brain is all groggy because you're carrying extra weight, or you're not looking after your mind, or you're not drinking enough water, or you're just not looking after yourself. How are you going to make good decisions for your business?
Yeah. It's exactly what I was going to say about decision making, right? Your decision making when you're tired, your decision making when you're not feeling at your best may not be the best decisions, right? And sometimes you make those decisions and you can't come back from them. So I think you're absolutely right. You need to be at the top of your game as much as you can. You need to be at the top of your game all the time. You know, we could compare this to sports or whatever, if you like, right? Sports people train to be at their best all the time. Or do they think maybe for this championship I won't bother? I'll be a little bit less. They always train to be the best they can, and whatever that takes. So yeah, we'll get onto the house, because whether that's sleep, food, rest, whatever, right?
Yeah. And actually, there was I was watching a YouTube video recently with Tony Robbins on it, and he was talking about leadership. And he said, one of the key things about you see in great leaders is great leaders look after themselves physically and mentally, because they cannot influence and lead if they're coming from a place of personal weakness or ill ease in themselves. So it's so important. So I think we've got the point across about how important it is and why it's important. Okay.
Well, the only other point I would make on that is you and I have always been engaged in some level of fitness and well-being, right? Maybe to different degrees. That when we were first engineers, we probably misbehaved a bit more than we should have done, right? But as we came through the ranks, I think we did it more and more. Did that make a difference to how successful we are? I don't think it was a coincidence.
And well, actually, and when I look around all the different companies I work with, all the leaders I know, nearly all of them have some kind of sport they're really focused on and interested in, or they have some kind of gym regime or something that they do physically to keep themselves fit. I know very, very few successful leaders who don't look after themselves and or aren't conscious of it, and therefore they're just ignoring it. You can, someone will say, yeah, but I know this person who's massively overweight, never done any exercise, and he's a really successful guy. Brilliant. There are exceptions to the rule, obviously. So I think it is important, and there are great examples. You have to look after yourself, and most great leaders do that. And so if you want to, this is about how to become a great leader, this Zoomcast, this podcast. And so that's the key message from this, is make sure you're looking after yourself.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So let's talk about the how then. So what would be some of your what have you seen best practice in this space?
I would think making sure you've got a balance. I won't say work-life balance, because that's kind of almost old hat. A balance between where you do work, where you do rest, where you do think, where you do other things, where you spend time with people other than people you spend time at work with. Having that balance and having something else you can take your mind to, I think is important. That's the place that I'd start. And now you could measure that, because you'd know how many hours and how many days you're spending where. Don't get me wrong, you're involved in a big deal, or you're involved in a major business change, and you could be locked away for days having to do that. That's fine, right? Because it happens. But on an ongoing basis, you need to make sure there's a balance between how much you're working, how much you're relaxing, and how much you're putting your brain to something other than your job.
I think even when you're busy, right? You and Gene talked about this last week. You need that routine. And most successful leaders have a routine in the morning. They have a routine. They're up early, and they have a routine they typically follow that involves something to do with physical exercise and something to do with mindfulness. They will have it. So even when they're busy, it might only be a 20-minute run or a 20-minute gym session instead of 40 minutes on a normal day, but they'll do something. And because you've got to have that, in my view and in my experience and people I've worked with, you have to have that time for yourself first thing in the morning to kickstart the body. How can you come in and influence a team if you haven't got your own oxygen levels going, your own blood flowing, and you've got your own endorphins up, ready to come in for the day?
Yeah, no, absolutely right. It's funny, you just triggered something in my mind about having that routine. Years ago, when I was in early management, I remember I used to get migraines every Saturday morning.
Right.
100% guaranteed. And I never really got it. And in the company I was working at the time, they sent you for executive health checks, right? And at this executive health check, I told them about the situation. And the doctor looked at it, and everybody looked at it, and nobody sorted it out. But this person that I was talking to then, this psychologist said, she was a psychologist maybe, and said, tell me about your week. What do you do for a job? I'm a sales manager. Okay. Lots of hours, high stress, full energy? Yeah. And you do that all week? Yeah. And you do that for 5 days. And then what do you do on the weekend? Well, Saturday morning, normally my son plays football. So 10 o'clock, we go off to football. Okay. What time do you get up for football? I said, probably about 9 o'clock. What time do you get up during the week normally? I said, 6:30. I'm on it. She said, that's exactly what you're doing. You're running at this level all the week, and then you suddenly drop off on a Friday night. And your body is used to getting up and getting activated. And when you don't do that, your brain can't cope with the fact that it's Saturday. Yeah. So a routine is really important. It doesn't mean get up on a Saturday morning and start work. It means get up on a Saturday morning and get your brain working, because that's what it wants you to do. And you could do something with it. It doesn't have to be dedicated to your job. But the thought about the routine is really quite important.
Yeah, and I think that routine needs to involve a number of things, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a fitness expert, but I know what works for me, and I know what works for other people. And you mentioned sleep. Actually, I hadn't written that down, but sleep is really key. Having really good night's sleep. I used to think, I remember watching an Arnold Schwarzenegger YouTube clip ages ago, and it was when he was governor of California, and he was talking about how to be successful. And he said, all you need is 6 hours sleep a night. And people say to me, well, I need more sleep than that. And he said, I just tell them, sleep faster. So I used to set my alarm clock 6 hours after I went to bed. And whatever time I went to bed, I set it for 6 hours later, because I thought, well, if it's good for Arnie, it's good for me. And then I went and learned about sleep. I went to a sleep specialist presentation and learned about sleep, and realized that actually everyone's slightly different, but you need a good amount of sleep for your body to recover and to reset the brain, so the brain stops thinking about stuff and it has a chance to reset, so that you can then work effectively the next day. When you wake up, when you've got that groggy head, that's when you haven't had enough sleep, because the brain hasn't had a chance to reset. Well, it could be to do with too many pints, but but so sleep. I don't know what have you learned about sleep?
But that's interesting, right? Because I personally feel more groggy if I have too much sleep.
Okay, all right.
So 6-7 hours works really well for me. 8.5, 9, I'm feeling really bad. So as you say, it's personal. It's down to each individual. Does it make you a better person if you sleep less? No. Don't think there's a scale here, guys, that you're tougher because you can only do 6 hours sleep. Maybe that's what your body needs.
Yeah.
Some people need to relax more in an afternoon, right, and have a power nap. I don't know if that works for your body.
Power naps are proven to work really, really powerfully. And a lot of companies, look at Google, and they all encourage that.
Yeah. What I would say, guys, is listen to your body. Your body's telling you things on a regular basis, but you've got to learn your own body, and you've got to listen to it and do what you think is right for you.
And
if I don't do physical exercise, does that make me feel worse? Yeah, I've got to do physical exercise.
Right.
Does it have to be every day for 6 hours? No. Right? So listen to your body.
Yeah, and I think, so let's move on to that, right? So sleep is one of the pillars of looking after yourself. Some kind of physical exercise has got to be part of looking after yourself as well. Whether it's going for a walk, going for a run, cycling, going to the gym, something that you do on a regular basis that is going to get that blood flowing through the body, and wake up like all of the muscles and just everything in your, and get the blood to the brain, the oxygen flowing to the brain.
You're running every morning now, right?
I am at the moment, yeah, and I did for many years run every single day, yeah. Not always, you don't have to run. Sometimes it might be half an hour because I've got to go and catch a train to London, but I will always make sure I get that in.
So what was the motivation for that? What was the drive that got you doing that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, and for me, some of the time it was training for events, but part of it was, and it still is now. I mean, still do it now. It's time for yourself before you give yourself to everyone else.
Okay.
And that's that. And you can listen to a podcast, and so you can learn something as well during that time. Being in nature is really important. Being out, personally, because I live in the countryside, being out amongst trees and in nature, that's proven to really help you mentally. And obviously the oxygen is much better when you're out in the countryside as well. So no, that's what works for me.
Yeah. It's interesting because it sounds like we're saying you need to take a lot of time to plan to do these things, right? But it doesn't need to be overbearing, guys, right? You need to just make sure one of your priorities is you. As a leader, one of your priorities has to be you. And you need to decide how best you're going to do that, whether it's about sleep or exercise or whatever. But you've got to make sure that priority is there.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be. So it's doing something in the morning, I think, is really taking that time. And Tony Robbins calls it the hour of power. Other people have called it, this. And you can, like I did yesterday, you can go for a walk with customers or employees, or whoever you need to have a meeting with. Why not just block out an hour, and instead of sitting down in a meeting room with a load of PowerPoint, go out for a walk, go and have a conversation, go out for it and get the blood flowing. So if we move on to sleep, exercise, some kind of physical exercise, and everybody knows that, and especially at the moment, you need to boost your immune system. Get your immune system working. So then the mind. Let's talk about the mind and how you might look after your mind. What have you seen?
Well, let's just do one more on body. Is there anything we want to talk about on diet?
Okay, go on.
I mean, again, it's about food is partly enjoyment, right? But food is also about fuel for your body. So you've also got to think about, are you eating and drinking all the right stuff? We all go out and misbehave now and again. We all have social events and we do all of those good things. But having enough water, perfect timing, right? Having enough water in your body, making sure you're eating all the right stuff. I think Tony Robbins calls it wet food, right? Make sure you have enough wet food. So again, look, we're not going to be experts here about what the right diet is, but what we would say is make sure you've got the right balance and give yourself food that is fuel for your body, not just enjoyment for yourself. I think that's got to be important.
Yeah, so correct. And look, intelligent people, everyone knows what they should and shouldn't eat. It doesn't mean they do what they're, we don't always do what we know. We know what to do, but we don't always do what we know. But it's being conscious of that. Drinking lots of water is really important. One of the things I found worked really well, by the way, talking about diet, is fasting. And fasting for 16 hours and then having an 8-hour feed period, which is kind of come out of the US in the last 12, 18 months. Mm-hmm. And it's proven to really help increase the amount of growth hormones and growth cells in the body, which helps with your mind and helps with your brain. And I find if I eat, sort of 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening, and then don't have anything else apart from water and black coffee till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, you go through a little bit of a period in the morning where you're hungry, but I'm fired up and awake in the afternoon instead of being tired. So I find it works really well. So that's another good thing I've learned.
Yeah. So again, look at it for yourselves, guys. Decide what you think works for you. So sorry, Neil, you were saying let's get on to mind.
Yeah, let's talk about the mind then, and looking after the mind and how you manage stress, how you manage your own mind so that you got clarity to be able to make decisions, be healthy. What's your thoughts, experience around that?
So stress is a good one, isn't it? Because there might be a belief that stress is a bad thing, right? It's not, guys. The right level of stress and the right type of stress is a good thing. It keeps you alert. It keeps you on your game, right? And that's just the way that we've evolved over time, right? So, you need to have that level of stress that keeps you competitive, that keeps you engaged, keeps you in an area of discomfort, right? Like we said, right? No success comes from being in an area of comfort, right? So you need to be in that space. So it's just a myth I wanted to make sure we dispelled here, right? Stress is not a bad thing.
I think also stress is different things to different people, depending on where you're coming from and everyone has a different level of uncomfortableness that they can manage. But having techniques for how you manage your mind is, so, I meditate every day. I have done for years and years and years. And it's really interesting when you talk to so Tim Ferriss did a book and he talked to some of the most successful people in the world in politics, in sport, in movies, in all sorts of areas, and in the army. And nearly all of them had some kind of meditation they did every day, whether it was in the morning or in the evening, some of them both, morning and evening. But meditation's been proven to kind of help clear the mind, get everything, like the sleep, resetting the brain, but also just it reduces the levels of chemicals in the body that create stress. So you can get lots of apps around mindfulness now as well. Mindfulness is a way that people talk about meditation these days.
Yeah. I've never done it, actually. I've not taken the time to do that. I've not made it a priority. It's something I think I should go and look at and see.
I think I've seen you. I'm sure I've seen you meditating in meetings.
Yeah.
Where you've got to phase out.
It was some great meditation in some of those sessions.
But meditation isn't so. I have this conversation with a lot of people I coach is about meditation. Oh, I don't know whether I can get into that zone and that kind of that space where I'm just zoned out. I say, look, don't worry about it. Just sit there, breathe, focus on your breathing, close your eyes, sit comfortably up straight, just breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, and just keep your eyes shut and just clear your mind. Focus on the breathing. And even if thoughts pop in, it's okay. Just let them come in and let them float out.
You know what? I think I know a good place to trigger that, and that if you've never been for a massage. Honestly, if you go for a full body massage, you can just kind of lose yourself in that, right? If you can become relaxed, right? Some people can't relax themselves in that situation. But the first time that I had a full body massage, I just completely disconnected. And it just shows, right? You can do it. You can.
That might be another thing to think about when you're looking at how you look after yourself, is booking in some of those things like massages and stuff. Because people do say that it releases a lot of the lymph around the body by doing it. Yeah. And so the mindfulness piece is really key. And Headspace is an app that lots of people talk about. I know loads of people use it. Guided meditation is available on YouTube. There's so much out there, and it doesn't have to take long, 10 minutes max. You don't have to spend a lot of time in it, but just try it. I would highly recommend it. It makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
One other thing I've written down here, are we okay to move on?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
So we talked about meditate. We talked about physical. We've talked about food and health. We've talked about sleep. We've talked about the mind. The other thing I wrote down, and it kind of came out what Jean was talking about last week, is who are you going to go to? Who are your cheerleaders, your mentors, the people that believe in you more than you believe in yourself? That when things aren't going, so what's your release valve? Who's the person you can go and talk to when they're not in your line management, because that kind of doesn't always work. Who are your mentors to go and talk to them?
So that's important, isn't it? I mean, it could be a peer, it could be somebody who's, as you say, could be a mentor, could be a sponsor, but it's somebody that you feel comfortable having those conversations with without judgment, that you can reflect some conversations off, right? Gets you a different point of view. Look, if you could find yourself a coach, that's probably best, right? If you could find, and by the way, I recommend coaching. If anyone's interested, I could recommend a really good coach.
But to be honest, it's a good point, because just because I coach doesn't mean, but coaching leaders, what I find is I end up being there, especially people who own their own businesses. They have no one to talk to. They have no one to go to. So you kind of, you be there, you're the point of release for them to have that conversation that's frustrating them. Or it's that opportunity to, to talk things through. You know, I'm feeling this way. You can't, if you're running a business, it's difficult to talk about feelings with your team. So I do find that I end up being not like an agony aunt, but you become a person who's helping someone to have conversations that they can't have within their own business.
I would think that's a really good example of, until somebody has spent time with a coach, until someone has spent time having those free and non-judgmental conversations, you don't realize the value of it. Right? You know, I don't need to talk to anybody here. I'm okay. I've got people close to me now who I see could do with some support in that area, and you know, they just believe they don't because they see it as not necessary.
Yeah.
Will it make you better? Will it make you more effective? And will it make your well-being overall a better place to be? Yeah. So it's worth thinking about that, guys. Worth thinking about it.
And with some organisations, you know, that structure is there. With others, you need to go and find it. I mean, I've personally used a coach for years and years and years to help me with so many different things. So, but that, you know, there could be a mentor. It could be your wife. You know, my wife Anna's a fantastic point of contact to go to and have conversations about things that where I'm getting frustrated or I don't know my way forward.
Yeah.
You know, so I find her really helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because probably the closest conversations I have on that level now is with my son. Right. Yeah. He's early in his career. You know, he's in sales and he behaves in a certain way. I guess I can see some of me in him and the things he's doing, but it's good conversations that you could bounce off on a level at which you can both understand each other, which is good from a business perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. So I didn't start a timer at the beginning of this actually. So I didn't. So I think we've probably done about 30 minutes. Maybe.
I've got us at 30 minutes just about now.
Is it? Okay. All right. So good time to start pulling it together then. Is there any kind of final thoughts you wanted to add on this topic of looking after yourself as a leader?
Well, there's one more note that I'd made that we haven't hit yet, and that is about celebrating success. Right? There are times at which you can celebrate success and they don't have to be big wins. Celebrating that success gives your brain a different way to operate as well and gives you a different feeling to feel good about the things you're doing. If all you're doing is pounding away, right, on the treadmill and you don't see anything coming back, right, that's not going to be healthy for you. But the success doesn't have to be big. Celebrate small wins. Your team have achieved something. Find things to celebrate, because I think that's really important that you give yourself that balance.
Yeah, psychologically, it's really important because it reinforces in your brain that you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Yeah. Overall, Neil, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and we did say we knew 30 minutes would be a challenge for this one, but I'm hoping that we've hit some buttons there for people that they may not have thought of before.
And I think it's such an important topic, and maybe we need to revisit it at another point, and maybe we get a specialist guest on this one.
Yeah.
In fact, I know a sleep specialist we could get on. That'd be an interesting conversation. But I think this. Make sure, if we're going to get any message out, we've both said it. Make sure you're making time for yourself. Make sure you're making time to look after yourself physically, mentally, well-being. Because it's good for you, it's good for your team, it's good for the business. And there's lots of ways of doing that. And just, drop the ego of being some tough leader, because, John Wayne with the white hat, that isn't leadership these days.
And think about your family, guys. Think about the people around you, right, that are having to endure what you're like when you're stressed, or could help you enjoy that.
Really, really good point as well, yeah. So, okay, so that's the end of episode 6. Episode 7, we're going to have a think about what we do on that. We're lining some guests up at the moment to bring in to do some conversations that I think will be really interesting. But thank you for all of your comments, all your feedback. Please subscribe below and give us a like or a thumbs up. Any comments you want to leave us, please do. The podcasts are all available on Spotify and all that kind of stuff. I think that's the marketing message. I can't remember if there was anything else there.
That's it. I think you've hit all the buttons we need to. No, that's good.
All right, brilliant. Well, great to see you, Albert, and look
Good
forward
to see
to
you.
catching you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank
Bye.
you again. Cheers. Take care.